What if the roads you once knew turned into lawless lands where the poor have to sell their dreams to survive, and chaos erupts in every corner of the city? Welcome to Santa Monica in 2025, a place that is no longer the dreamy beach scene in Hollywood films, but is gradually becoming the epicenter of a nightmare called the homelessness crisis. Hundreds of people crowded into damp alleys, abandoned parking lots, and streets that were once bustling with activity. Crime is increasing. The police are gradually retreating. White zones, areas where even law enforcement dares not venture, are gradually expanding, turning a tourist city into a lawless land where all norms have collapsed. In today's video, we'll step into the heart of Santa Monica in 2025, honestly and without judgment, to take a clear look at the true face of modern America, a place where just one misstep can plunge a person into the abyss of despair. Can you believe it? In Santa Monica, where vibrant postcards depict golden sunsets and palm trees swaying in the sea breeze, a silent but profound humanitarian crisis is unfolding: the uncontrolled spread of homelessness. Right beneath million-dollar apartments and cafes, where a latte costs $7, are rows of makeshift tents stretching along the park, beach, bus station, and even the entrance to the city library. Santa Monica is not just a tourist destination. It was once dubbed California's retirement paradise, an ideal place to peacefully end a lifetime of work. But today, that picture has developed noticeable cracks. According to official results from the most recent homeless count, 926 homeless individuals were recorded living within the city, a 15% increase in just 1 year. Among them, 73 people were homeless, living on the streets or in vehicles. An additional 46 people found shelter in shelters, emergency hostels, hospitals, or jails. Compared to other major California cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco, these numbers might not be shocking, but placed in the context of a city that is less than 8 square miles wide, this is a wake-up call. Santa Monica, a city that still wears the guise of paradise. But behind that glamorous facade lies a hell that is cracking day by day. Under the awnings, along the once clean walkways, tent zones are springing up like a persistent reminder that the American dream is being eroded not far away, but right in the heart of cities that were once symbols. Life there is a series of uncertain days, having their tents cleared by the police without alternative accommodation, losing their personal documents, making it impossible to apply for aid, or simply not having enough food for 3 meals a day. Some people sought shelter in underground parking garages, while others crowded into overcrowded shelters where neither hygiene nor security could be guaranteed. On rainy nights, many people only have a piece of plastic and pray they won't be blown away into open manholes. Santa Monica used to be a place people chose to live slowly. Now it's a place where people are forced to survive. And as the social safety net crumbles, "Every man for himself" becomes the default slogan for those who once believed in the promise of not being left behind. Will future generations still have the opportunity to walk these streets with a sense of security? Or will it all be just a memory of a city once called hope? And if a community like Santa Monica, with its abundant budget, prime location, and highly educated population, is also powerless against this problem, what can we expect from less fortunate places? Not every journey leads to California, and not everyone who comes here finds a fresh start. While tourists see Santa Monica as a peaceful destination for hundreds of homeless people, this city has become the final turning point, a place where all options seem to be exhausted. But amidst that scene, a local businessman named John Aller was trying something different. No need to build additional shelters, not issuing additional food stamps, not the million-dollar plans that are already too familiar but still insufficient to change reality. John and the people in the Santa Monica Coalition are doing something simpler. They're giving homeless people tickets to go home. A one-way ticket, by plane or car, is only needed if the person has family or friends willing to welcome them at their destination. That's the only condition. And for many who are barely surviving under store awnings or in park corners, this is nothing short of a true escape. The initial results were somewhat quiet, but no less significant. In the first week, 2 people in Venice contacted us to fly back to Seattle. Recently, about 8 people have returned to states like Idaho, Wisconsin, Florida, and Chicago. Some homeless people who used to live near Ocean Avenue have chosen to return to Idaho. They shared that it wasn't because there were more opportunities, but simply because people there are more pleasant and you don't lose things at night. A simple choice. But it says it all, how rare peace has become. The special feature of this program is that it is not coordinated by the government itself. All expenses are funded by private donors and small businesses in the city. John has also begun collaborating with an AI company, along with volunteers and community representatives, to process the registration list, match destinations, and ensure that those leaving truly have somewhere to go and someone to welcome them. However, not everyone was ready to get on that flight. Some people refuse because they have no one left to go back to. Some people fear that no matter where they go, they will still carry unnamed wounds. Some people are simply used to the rhythm of street life, where everything is temporary but familiar. These were predictable reactions, and also a reminder that the solution is never one-dimensional. Another pressing issue is that some residents expressed concern that the nature of giving tickets is simply pushing the problem from one place to another. That many people, after leaving one city, become homeless in the next. There have been cases in reality that show this loop is real. Some people who received tickets left the eastern states, flew to Los Angeles hoping to find a fresh start, but soon found themselves homeless in a city already struggling with a crisis. And as an inevitable consequence, the crisis in LA was not only not alleviated, it became even more deadlocked, adding further pressure to an already overburdened system. And so, the homelessness crisis only changed zip codes. It was never truly solved at its root. Some people frankly say, we are creating a cycle of despairing migration, where the most vulnerable are just being sent away, instead of truly being helped. So, is this a humanitarian solution, or just a way to quietly clean the sidewalks under a cloak of benevolence on the one hand? It's clear that many people feel grateful. They want to leave. On the other hand, those who have no one to return to, or who have lost connection with the past, continue to be left behind, even in relief efforts. If you ever lived in California in the 1970s or 80s, you'll surely remember the feeling a small coastal home seemed within reach. A stable job was enough to support a family, and peaceful neighborhoods like Santa Monica were where everyone dreamed of retiring. But that era is over. And instead, there's an unprecedented real estate boom in the history of modern America. Today, the average rent in Santa Monica hovers around $3,800 per month, while the average income of a full-time worker in Los Angeles is only about $3,200, $3,500 before taxes. That means even if you have a stable job, you can still be pushed out of your home at any time. The imbalance between the cost of living and income is no longer a potential threat. It is a lived reality. And in cities like Santa Monica, where land is valued for its ocean view rather than actual housing needs, workers, from cafe employees to delivery drivers, are becoming homeless residents. They serve a city they can't afford to live in. Many people call this the urbanization trap. As the city develops, land prices increase, and luxury apartments spring up along the avenues. Affordable housing options gradually disappear. Each newly approved project is a promise to investors, and also a silent judgment for those living on an average salary. This trap isn't just tightening around the poor, it's devouring the middle class as well. Those who once thought they were safe now find themselves living on credit cards, struggling with rent, and constantly on the brink of an event, illness, job loss, or rising prices that could push them over the edge. The most heartbreaking thing is the collapse of the housing dream in Santa Monica didn't come from a single major event, but from small decisions repeated over many years. Incentives for large investors, delays in social housing planning, regulations tightening ADU building rights, and temporary agreements that ultimately become permanent, like a door that seems to open wide, but is actually closing inch by inch. Each new apartment building that springs up is an opportunity lost for those who have lived here for decades. Why is a city that once prided itself on its humanity gradually becoming inaccessible to the very people who built it? One of the measures local authorities often use to address homelessness is providing temporary shelters, with the hope that these will be a lifeline for those without a place to stay. However, the reality was far from expectations. These shelters, which are supposed to help the homeless find temporary housing, often fail to meet their basic needs and sometimes become one of the reasons their plight worsens. Certainly, these centres provide overnight accommodation, but life in these facilities is full of difficulties and shortages. Temporary shelters are often overcrowded, with cramped spaces and unsanitary living conditions. Adding to this is the lack of support services, from healthcare to psychological assistance, which makes the homeless feel as though they are simply being pushed from one inconvenient area to another, without the opportunity to change their lives. Some shelters lack strict supervision, leading to security issues that prevent the homeless from finding safety. Clashes, violence, or abuse occur frequently in these places. Many people, especially women and children, feel they cannot live peacefully in such environments. Some people who have lived in shelters have shared that feeling safe was a luxury for them. They not only had to face material deprivation, but also lived in an environment filled with fear and insecurity. Furthermore, these shelters are not a long-term solution either. The homeless cannot simply live day to day in these facilities without a plan for reintegration into society. Temporary housing can only help them survive in the short term, but it doesn't provide them with an opportunity to start their lives over, an essential condition they need to escape the cycle of homelessness. When shelters cannot meet the basic needs of the homeless, they become part of the problem, not the solution. They are not safe havens, but merely temporary stopping points in a life with no way out. This not only reflects shortcomings in strategies to support the homeless, but also demonstrates a lack of responsibility and humanity in how we treat those who need the most help. So, when safe havens are no longer truly safe, can we continue to face a society where those left behind have nowhere to go? Can society endure this separation forever without truly finding a long-term solution where everyone has the opportunity to change their lives, instead of living eternally in the shadows of unsafe and deprived shelters? One of the biggest paradoxes in the current homelessness crisis is how the law, which was created to protect citizens, has become one of the biggest obstacles for those living on the streets or in makeshift camps. Instead of seeking to protect and support the homeless, cities are using laws to clean up poor areas, pushing them away from central districts. The homeless not only face the hardships of street life, but are also victims of unfair, and sometimes even absurd, legal regulations. In Philadelphia and many other cities, laws such as bans on outdoor sleeping, tent encampments, and measures to clean up temporary shelters have become the primary tools for managing homelessness. Instead of providing housing or healthcare support, the authorities chose the easier solution, pushing vulnerable people out of society's sight. The homeless, those without shelter, are considered a nuisance and a social burden. They are being chased out of parks, sidewalks, and public areas that they consider their last refuge. In reality, these measures don't address the fundamental problem and only make the situation worse. People who are displaced from an area will simply seek shelter elsewhere, creating constant movement. And the problem of homelessness remains unresolved. In fact, these regulations sometimes even increase violence and crime, as the homeless have nowhere to seek protection. The lack of safe spaces makes them vulnerable to criminal groups who exploit their insecurity and deprivation. The current legal system doesn't seem to recognize the homeless as individuals in need of assistance, but rather, they are viewed as a problem to be eliminated. This makes many homeless people feel not only abandoned by society, but also treated as enemies by the authorities. They are forced to live in the shadows, while their small acts of survival are considered illegal. This policy is not only wrong from a humanitarian perspective, but also lacks a long-term solution to the issue of homelessness. If the law cannot help, if it cannot provide protection and reintegration programs, can we continue to consider it the sole tool for addressing such a deep-rooted problem, when the law becomes the enemy of those who need help? Are we losing the human essence in this society? Amidst soaring numbers, crowded camps, and debated policies, there are still quiet but saving graces individuals, organizations, and local communities trying to do the right thing, no matter how small. In Santa Monica, where the story of homelessness is often told with a weary and helpless tone, a community network has begun to reconnect forgotten pieces, without fanfare or television appearances. They are ordinary people, small businesses, and charitable groups, providing the most essential support: hot meals, a safe place to sleep overnight, or simply a conversation to make someone feel seen. Some groups have incorporated technology, such as data platforms or artificial intelligence, to more quickly track cases at risk of homelessness, providing support before they completely fall into the cycle of wandering, despite their small scale. These projects are proving one thing instead of spending billions of dollars on inefficient programs. Perhaps we should invest in connection, where people see each other, not through statistics, but through genuine presence. Not everyone in the community agrees with this approach. Some people believe it's just a temporary fix for a cracked system. But there are also those who believe that if you don't start with small and familiar things, there will be no solution big enough to change anything. An elderly resident once shared, "When I was young, Santa Monica was a place where people smiled at each other on the street. Now, sometimes I step over 3 people huddled on the sidewalk and don't know where to look." It was that very remorse that brought many people back, not with money, but with their time and presence. The charity kitchens were opened in the churchyard. Free lockers are appearing next to coastal parking lots. Someone printed a map showing the way to the cleanest restrooms, seemingly small things, but they can change a day, or even a lifetime. The light from the community is not enough to dispel the darkness, but in a city where even the authorities sometimes struggle between the budget and their responsibilities, that light, however fragile, is still what helps people hold on to a little hope. And perhaps it is precisely that, quiet compassion, that is the only thing no city should lose. And perhaps it is precisely that, quiet compassion, that is the only thing no city should lose. Because if even simple kindness becomes a luxury in a modern society, then what is left for us to call civilization? As we look at the growing homelessness crisis in Santa Monica and many other cities, the question we cannot ignore is, can a city truly be measured by clean streets, skyscrapers, or the prosperity of its downtown hay? Isn't the humanity of a city reflected in how it treats the most vulnerable members of society, a city? no matter how developed, cannot fully reflect its value if it does not care for those living on the margins, those who face poverty, crime, and homelessness. We can count the number of skyscrapers and luxury shopping districts, but the streets filled with makeshift tents, where thousands of homeless people struggle in poverty, are the true measure of a city's humanity. The humanity of a society is not only reflected in its wealth policies, but rather in how that society protects the vulnerable and the homeless. While one part of the city is adorned with brightly lit streets and bustling resorts, another part lives in the shadows of neglect. The homeless, children without access to education, those left behind by the social system, all are evidence of the failure to build a just society. Santa Monica, despite being a city renowned for its beautiful beaches and prosperity, cannot escape the harsh reality of homelessness. The streets are not only facing an increase in crime, but also a growing number of homeless people. However, the question isn't, can we let this continue like this? But rather, can we live in a society where fairness and humanity are only seen through bright cities, where the vulnerable are forgotten? Looking at this reality, we must ask ourselves, can we continue to allow the homeless to live in this miserable state without taking action? Can wealth and prosperity compensate for the suffering that millions of people endure every day when they have no roof over their heads when we face the issue of homelessness? We are not just dealing with a social problem, but with the very essence of humanity in modern society. Measuring the humanity of a city isn't about counting development figures, but how we respond to the suffering and loss of the vulnerable. Poor streets and areas with high rates of homelessness are not signs of individual failure, but rather the failure of a system that cannot protect everyone. Families without homes, children born into difficult circumstances are not just soulless numbers in a statistic table. They are human beings, with their own unique stories and shattered dreams. Therefore, we need to re-evaluate our role in rebuilding this society. Can we continue to live in a society where prosperity is only for a small portion? While others are left in the dark, can we look at the poor streets and say, "This is not my problem"? Or will we stand up and take action? It is we ourselves, the community, the government, and each individual who can decide whether this society will continue to exist as it is. Measuring the humanity of a city isn't about looking at its beautiful and glamorous aspects, but rather at the wounds and pain that society has endured. Are we ready to face these wounds and change, or will we continue to turn a blind eye, leaving these vulnerable people to live in darkness forever? The homelessness crisis in Santa Monica, as well as in other cities across the United States, is not a fictional story or a distant event. This is the painful reality we are facing right now. The roads once known for their coastal beauty and prosperity have now become places where thousands of homeless people face an uncertain future. While the American dream grows increasingly distant, Santa Monica, once a symbol of success and opportunity, is now a living testament to social division, where the vulnerable are left behind in a world that no longer has a place for them. This story isn't just about Santa Monica. It's the story of the entire United States. From gilded streets to impoverished areas, all are facing a profound shift in social, economic, and political landscapes. If what you just watched resonated with you in any way, please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to tell stories that not everyone is willing to listen to, but everyone needs to know. Each share is an opportunity to add one more person who understands, one more person who cares, and one more ray of hope for those whose lives are lived in silence. This video is not intended to condemn any organization, individual, or political group. All information presented is based on publicly available data, official reports, and field observations from multiple perspectives. The stories, images, and perspectives presented are educational in nature. reflecting social realities to stimulate constructive discussion without creating incitement, panic, or generalizations. We do not condone any illegal behavior whatsoever. We do not normalize suffering. And we do not turn human misery into entertainment. This is not a conclusion, but an invitation to reflect together, to dialogue together, and to hold on to the remaining humanity within each of us.